Australian Olympic representative and men's team coach, John Fox. Foxy, good evening.
Good evening, Ian, and it's great to be back for a second season. And yeah, it's been a long time waiting, but hopefully it'll be a great night tonight.
Well, it was December. Now it's what, May? It's been a while, but anyhow, it's been a funny 18 months, hasn't it? How's life in Canberra? Good?
Yes. We haven't had the real cold weather yet, so it's nice. And as far as we've got pretty much open access to everywhere, so we're COVID-free here, which is lovely.
Okay, Brumbies are down, Raiders are down. What else is bad in Canberra? The weather's okay, that's good. Okay, joining Foxy first up is our second panellist of the evening. He's a media guru with Channel 7 and he's a Balmain stalwart and from one of water polo's great families. Good evening, James Falzon.
G'day, Ian. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. How's life? Good? You've been missing us?
I certainly have. I've missed talking water polo. So luckily we've got a big show tonight so we can just talk water polo all night. And there's no referees.
No referees. Yeah.
So it's a referee webinar without the referees. So this is fantastic.
It's a strange one, but I'm sure we'll bring them in because we normally do. In most sport, you bring in the referees. Not always positively, but we'll try. Okay, shortly to our special guest, of course, it's Danielle Spitty. She's going to be very interesting. But first, some notes on communication. Now, if you have a look at the bottom of your screen, the Q&A area there, if you tap that, and you'll be able to ask us a question. We'll do our very best to answer it for you. You can talk to Danielle or any one of us. And it's a great way to communicate any feedback. Love to hear from you. The Whistleblower, the address is rather whistleblower@gmail.com. You've got to get everything right, don't you? Our Instagram account address is whistleblower polo, hashtag who is TWB, the whistleblower. And our Facebook page, of course, is hashtag the whistleblower. Right, all forms of communication. I get confused with it all, but such is life. At least we're on tonight. Now, boys, I suppose that the big topic coming up, or we'll talk about some stuff that's happened already, but coming up, of course, it's the Olympics. And Foxy, I mean, I don't know if you were always all that confident that it was going to happen, but it looks everyone's getting vaccinated. It looks like it's all there.
Yeah, the talk coming out is it's happening, and it's interesting. I know the athletes and coaches and officials have all received a playbook, and I think they're receiving a second one, if not now, in the very immediate future, just outlining what you can and can't do once you land in Tokyo, and basically go to the village, and you're set up in your own little hub inside the village. My understanding is that you're getting your meals delivered to you, so there's no dining hall as such, which was a great part of the Olympic experience. But and then you'll travel to and from your competition. The buses will meet you out the front of your accommodation. They'll take you to training or your competition, and you'll return straight back. So it's going to be a very different Olympics if it goes ahead.
Well, it certainly will be. I remember, look, I haven't been an athlete as such, but I've covered them in the media and that, and it really was a great part of the day going to the dining hall, right? And not having that, it's going to be like in, Melbourne lockdown.
Yeah, well, it was a great part of the day because you could go and meet other athletes from not only your country but other sports, and then obviously international athletes. And yeah, it's going to be different. And that's not to mention when you finish your event. So for water polo, it's probably not that big a deal, but athletes will be coming and going all the time because you have to leave within 48 hours of you finishing your event. So not only can you not go and see events and basically you're stuck in the village, but yeah, you're not going to meet anyone else until probably you get back to quarantine in Australia.
Yeah,
Does that mean they need to quarantine back in Australia for 14 days when they come back in? And will they be doing that together?
Yeah, my understanding is they're setting up a a venue, a central, like the hubs they use for the football, so resort style accommodation, and you'll go back and basically quarantine in that one place, or there might be a number of them. But yeah, that's the deal at the moment.
But surely, Foxy, it's all about competition, winning if you can, winning medals if you can, doing your best, and not all this other subsidiary sort of stuff, extracurricular activities, so to speak. Surely, is that right?
Coaches are probably going to absolutely love it, Minnie, because they've got control over their players. They know where they are 24/7, and they can basically work on planning for every game with complete confidence that all their players are going to be switched on and looking forward to actually going to the pool and getting away from the village.
And James, I suppose it'd be very exciting for Channel 7. It only comes every 4 or 5 years, doesn't it? In this instance, 5 years.
Yeah, and at the moment, from a broadcast perspective, we're all guns blazing, getting ready for, I think, 74 days is the opening ceremony, and everything's coming along pretty nicely in terms of the way that, in my team in particular, we work on the graphics package and the actual in-program elements of it. So from our perspective as a whole business, getting really excited about the games.
Okay, thanks for getting us a job. I know you fixed up Debbie Watson, and that she's happy as Larry.
Excellent, good.
Okay, let's have a look at what you can see on your screen, which is the men's draw and the women's draw. And Foxy, I would have thought this is a horror show for the Australian team. Tell us all about it. Have a look.
It depends which way you look at it. Like, yes, it's a very hard draw, but you get to the Olympic Games, and every game there's no easy game. You basically have to win if you want to finish in the medals or the finals. You have to win games early on, and we know that some teams are susceptible to losses early on in the tournament. Croatia is one,
yep.
And I don't know what the actual draw is at the moment, but and Serbia also, these teams, it's a 2-week tournament. You have to basically start well, but you don't want to peak too early. So if you can grab a game or two off the opposition early, it just opens up the whole draw. And we know that you have to finish in that top 4 to progress through to the quarters. So yes, it's a difficult draw. Obviously, you'd prefer to have South Africa, and well, Japan will be hard to beat in their home country. We saw that with Brazil in Rio. But yeah, I don't see it as being that difficult that it's so daunting we basically don't have any faith in us getting through. As I said, early games, if you can put them in the bank, it counts for a lot later on.
Because I'm pretty sure we've got Montenegro, that's game 1, and then Croatia is our second game. So from either a coaching or a player's perspective, Foxy, how focused would you be on those first couple of games as opposed to all the games? Like, would your main focus in the lead up be on just really starting well against those 2, or would you be looking at those first 5 games as you prepare for the tournament?
It's a really good question. Unfortunately, like in other years, you just don't have the opportunity to both play because we know both our men's and women's teams aren't playing in the World League. So they're missing those opportunities to play and scout the opposition. But having said that, the other teams haven't seen us. You'd plan for every team, but your focus certainly would be on those first couple of games. Now, Montenegro and Croatia, we know them very well. Obviously, Croatia, we've got a Croatian coach, and he would have a lot of information on the Croatians. The Montenegrins, very similar. We know them. So it's a matter of, you would plan specifically for those 2 games, but you just can't leave everything to those 2 and forget about the rest. You've got to have a game plan in place for everything. And that comes back to team selections as well. You're going to pick the best team that's going to do the job across the entire 2 weeks, not just for 1 or 2 games.
So, John, are you aware of our schedule in the lead up to it? Are we playing any warm-up games prior?
No, I'm not aware. I know that the senior men, one of their last parts of their preparation is 2 weeks in Canberra at the end of this month and into June, and then that doesn't leave very long. So I'm not sure where they're going or what they're doing after Canberra, but in terms of tournaments, I can't see too many being played. Maybe someone else can fill us in on that.
Or someone who's going to
the Fast Fives tournament in the middle of May, that could be perfect for them.
No doubt. No, they won't be. They won't be taking part, will they? Because one of them was going to be a guest tonight, and he couldn't make it for logistic reasons. AJ Roach was going to be one of our guests tonight, and unfortunately, he could have answered all those questions, couldn't he, Foxy? But there you go. It seems to me that match play, there is no substitute for it, from my experience. And if we're not going to have any, boys and girls, whereas our opposition are going to have some, because of obvious reasons, we've got another problem there.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a big task to us to go in cold, essentially. And you see there are some teams, well, the Europeans are playing. We do have some players in Europe, obviously, still playing. So Young is playing and Nathan Power, they're still playing with their club teams. But as far as national teams go, yeah, we've made that decision, and understandably so, not to play in the World League, which is probably the main lead-up tournament before the Olympics. So, yeah, it is. It's going to be difficult going in cold, but you've got to work with what you've got there.
Like you said, that could really play to our advantage, couldn't it? Like, I think we're going to talk, there's a couple of the national teams up in Gold Coast at the moment, and there's a couple of surprise people up there, aren't there, in terms of one big one missing and a couple of surprise ones up there. Can you talk us through those?
Yeah, well, so I think most people would be aware that Joe Kays ended up, he sat on the decision for a while, but about a month ago now, he's made the decision not to commit himself for Tokyo this year. So he's back home in New Zealand. He's still playing water polo. I understand he played in the New Zealand National League, which has just finished up. But it was just too big an ask and too much of an uncertainty for him to commit. So Goran Tomasevich has come in and as a replacement centre forward. So the team hasn't been chosen yet. I do know and proud to say that one of our young protege, Matt Wilson, has been training with the men's team as well. So Elvis has obviously seen some great potential in Matt. And if he doesn't make this team, he's obviously got a great experience playing with the squad in the lead up. So, yeah, there's a few others as well, I think, locals that are being invited wherever the camps are being based.
Yeah. Goran coming in, that's look, when you're talking about a surprise packet and people not seeing, like, when would have been the last time he would have played international water polo? So that's a big surprise packet. But what an in terms of a big, skillful centre forward and I like him because he's a goal scorer. You get the ball near him and he just tries to do whatever he can to get the ball in the back of the net. How would have you handled handling him as you playing centre back against him? What would have been your sort of tactics around playing against him?
Exactly what the teams are doing now, Jason. I'd be calling everyone back and relying upon our goalkeeper and our blocking to shut out their outside shooters. But yeah, we did see a small taste of that with the Sydney competition that was hastily put together when the AWL was unfortunately cancelled. So I was up in Sydney and got to see Goran play, and basically all of the boys, bar the Queenslanders, because they were basically under COVID restrictions at the time. But just to see how the teams responded and played a very deep zone back on Goran. So it means that if we're getting the opposition to do that, our shooters at the top are going to basically come into their own, and we've got some very strong outside shooters. So, yeah, it's it's a string in our bow.
Yeah, great.
He's a pretty good player, the old Goran. A very nice fellow, pretty good player. Calls a spade in the water, and I wouldn't be messing with him. The only thing is, I don't know how much international water polo he's played. I don't think he's played any senior international polo, maybe junior polo, maybe, and that's a long time ago. So that could be a disadvantage, but he's a good player, very, very good player. And the big lefty from WA, there's an in, Foxy.
Pavillard was outstanding in Sydney a couple of weeks ago. Amazing shot. He can get up and down the pool. He's got such a long reach as well. So he, unlike some of our left-handers in the past, he does defend.
So
yeah, he's one player that the delayed Olympics have certainly helped for him to have that extra year and become a part of the squad. So yeah, very promising there.
6'6". He looks like he could be in the Hungarian team. He looks like a Hungarian in the water, and there's a definite in. Okay, you mentioned the Cat 7 Cup. That was because the AWL was cancelled. What do you think is the effect on Australian water polo of, look, that series, which would have gone for 3 months and then it shoveled down to a week, which is just the format of the old Australian Club Championships, which was a great tournament. It would have been really good. And now nothing except for the, hastily put together Cap 7 Cup, which really was sort of a, as we just said it, hastily put together. And, what sort of effect is that going to have on us?
It has an effect in that players aren't getting that intensive match preparation and competition. But having said that as well, the majority of the squad are training together quite regularly. And it's interesting, if I can go back when we had the AIS program and we had the majority of the squad, the senior squad, training together, we used to go away to Europe, and it was interesting. We would come in cold and sometimes play our best games of the whole tour early on, because other teams they didn't know what we were capable of. We had new players in the squad, and it was a bit of a surprise element. So that could be something that works in Australia's favour this time, because obviously teams do a lot of scouting, but playing no games, it's very difficult. But nothing beats match preparation, and you can contrive that in training. And we saw in the Cap 7 Cup in the final, that wasn't contrived. We had players arguing with referees. We had a player who was going to appear on tonight ejected from the game because of the competitive element that came to the fore, which you don't get in training so much. So, we work with what we've got, Minnie, and hopefully they can pull off the surprise.
I think from a sport perspective, it's disappointing in terms of not just for the players who now probably haven't the senior players haven't had a proper competition for 18 months. So there's that group that they're not in the national team, and they probably never will be, but they don't have that purpose and drive to keep training. So for them, it's probably really frustrating. But then from a broader sport perspective, to have that 2-week tournament up in Brisbane would have been incredible to publicise the sport. I know they had the deal with News Limited to try and put as many games on TV as possible, but just the exposure that the sport gets from that 2-week period, I think we miss out a lot on not having that big burst of energy and the PR ability of the sport. So from that, I think it's disappointing, and we've got to make sure that we pick that up when it does happen again next year.
Okay, don't bash down the doors. We'll talk about the Women's Olympic Draw with Danielle Spitty coming up in just a couple of minutes. The same, James, you might say about the cancellation of the Youth Festival up in Brisbane. And, of course, Foxy, you'd be, very interested in all of this, being one of our junior coaches. That, after last year as well, what sort of effect does that have on the development for the future?
Big development Ian. It's been a very difficult year in terms of, so we had the group that I coached last year, well, up till last year, which was the Born 02 boys, were meant to go to World Championships. They missed out. Then I've been appointed the 04 coach, and I haven't seen these guys yet. So the first time I was hoping to see them was at the AYC. It wasn't going to be a selection event, but it was an identification event just to see how players are progressing. You mentioned the AWL being cancelled and that opportunity for the Olympic athletes, but also for developing juniors. So that Born 02 group, and Born 01s, which have their world champs this year, they've missed out on training opportunities and exposure. And so, yes, it's been a difficult one, but we're hastily pulling together quite a few training camps and opportunities over the next couple of months to try and give these players opportunities to play both and to be recognised on a national basis, but also hopefully to play in New Zealand. We've got some tournaments planned.
Okay, got a question from Pete the Parrot. Coming to you, mate. I just said we were going to go and talk about the women who, in fact, do have a medal chance. There's no doubt about that. But I think we've just put it to bed that the boys, with a couple of ins there, they might surprise a few people as well. But it's about time now to introduce our special guest. She's a former World Championship or Junior World Championship gold medalist, very good goalkeeper in her time, and also the Balmain AWL coach for the ladies. And her name is Danielle Spitty. We welcome her to the show. Hi, Danielle. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Let's go to Pete the Parrot. He's on your Q&A button. Everybody, if you need to ask a question, that would be fantastic if you do that. Enough about the men. Women can win a medal. What do you think, Danielle?
I think, 100% the women can win a medal, and they've shown that in, every Olympics since 2000 when they've been involved. I think I completely agree with what John and James and yourself have said about, it's so hard. They haven't played an international game since, I think, January 2020 when they played the US. I think that was right, at the Youth Festival. So obviously, they're coming in, and I think cold and without the National League, I think that was a big loss for that national team as well, because obviously playing no real competitive games. But in saying that, there's so much experience in that team. You've got Bronwyn Knox going to her 4th Olympics. You've got Rowie going to her 3rd. You've got another handful going to their 2nd. So 100%, I think they can definitely pull off a medal. And I know that's their goal, and it's, really achievable.
Well, let's hope so. Let's pull up, Scotty, that women's draw slide again and have a look at the girls' draw if we can. There we go, Scotty. Beam me up, Scotty, with that Olympic slide. Who have we got, Danielle? I can't remember. Our draw.
We don't have the United States, which is a huge positive.
Yeah, I think Scotty may have. Here we go.
There we go.
Well done. So who have we got? We've got South Africa, the Netherlands, Spain, and Canada. Well, you'd get South Africa. You can beat them left-handed, but the Netherlands, Spain, and Canada. They'll be toughish. They'll be toughish, and also the Spaniards in particular playing a lot of polo. Oh, well, the Dutch are as well. So, and have a very good team at the moment. And the other group there, you can see Russia, China, Hungary, US, Japan. That's probably the harder group, I would say. What do you make of that, Danielle?
I don't think at an Olympic Games, and I think we saw this in Rio, that you can't discount anyone. So I know South Africa have had huge growth periods, and definitely we'd be hoping that's a win. But the Netherlands and Spain, I think they're always tough. Any European country is tough. And I think on their day, anyone can win. And that's always been a great thing in the women's side of the Olympics. It's so hard to qualify if you're a European country. So when they're there, they're going to make the most of it. And I think Canada, think this is their first Olympics, or were they in Sydney? Excuse me if I got that wrong. I was only young, but they are just going to be out there and ready to cause some trouble and cause some upsets. So I think it's hard, probably not as hard as the other side, but there's not going to be an easy game there.
And Danielle, who do we not want to get stuck in a crossover with? Obviously the Americans,
America.
but who else on that side of the door do we not want to get stuck playing against in a crossover?
Oh, it's tough. I think definitely we don't want to face America, obviously, until that gold medal game. They're, the one everyone is after. They've shown that for a long time now. The Russians, I really find, and in my international experience, they're hit or miss. They're either amazing and unstoppable, or and then Hungary, it's Hungary and water polo. So, it's a tough one. Definitely not the United States. And then you'd probably think, looking at that draw, you've got Russia and Hungary finishing second and third in that group. But I'm not sure on the day. Yeah, I don't envy them.
No, I don't either. Okay. All right. And being a coach of an Australian Water Polo League team, you would have been incredibly disappointed about the cancellation of the tournament, even though it was a 1 week event. In the old days, when you probably weren't born, those 1 week club tournaments, the Australian Club Championships, they were rip-roarers. They were a great event. And I think it would have been fantastic for anybody participating. And as an official, I was really looking forward to it. Must have been shattering for you being a coach, because I know you put in so much hard work as a National League coach.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just on the back of last year, obviously everyone was shattered last year with it cancelled with 2 weeks to go, and no one knew what was sort of going to happen in the world. And I think with what then unfolded, we all understood that. But I think this year, living where we live in Australia at the moment, we're so lucky. And when I saw that case in Brisbane, and same with the girls, I couldn't believe it. And yeah, it was so disappointing, not only for myself, but for the girls. Like, as we said before, I think James said, the girls in the national team have obviously had their challenges, but they've still had water polo to play. But for these good club girls that have been hanging around, it's been 2 years now of sort of all the training, early mornings, late nights, all for that culmination of National League and being able to, go there and win a medal. And from the Balmain perspective, we're really, for 2 years now, we've thought we could get to that gold medal match, and we were all prepared for that 1 week tournament. We trained for it, super excited. So with less than 48 hours, I think it was like 24 hours actually before we were supposed to board that plane, it was gutting. And yeah, there were lots of tears from my girls, but it is what it is, and we go again next year. Fingers crossed we get a National League.
Danielle, it was the timing could not have been worse.
No.
And you said there was tears. Did you actually bring the girls together and talk it through, or did you just say, right, go and we'll meet up shortly? How did you actually manage that as a coach and with the team itself?
Yeah, I think last year we were together, we were still playing games on that last weekend. So I could tell the girls be there together. But this year it was really hard. I think I sort of heard before the girls did, and then heard, they're going to release it in 15 minutes time. And I was like, I don't want my girls to be seeing this on social media. So it was really quick phone calls. It was on the phone. It's not on. We're going to have to talk again in a second. I've got to get on to the other 15 players. So I think, yeah, it was hard. And then, we all had our moment, and then we met up, had a nice dinner, reflected on, I think we were really lucky in Sydney. We have a great Sydney competition. So we did get to play some great water polo. Balmain had some fantastic results. But yeah, it was like, it's cancelled, super disappointed. 2 days later, you're all playing in a tournament in 3 days' time, and you're playing 4 games in 36 hours. So it was definitely a whirlwind, that's for sure.
Yeah, it would have been a roller coaster of disappointment, but yeah, the Cap 7 tournament was fantastic.
Yeah, it was. And it was something, I think, once we all, you know, had a little dummy spit about National League not being on, we regrouped and, you know, we went into that, you know, really wanting to win it. And, you know, all that training, at least we got something, which is, you know, a lot better than nothing.
Okay, let's get down to talking about you and your career in water polo. How did you get started in the game?
My last name's Bauer, so I didn't really have a choice but to try water polo. But I think, yeah, both my parents played. Apart from seeing Dad play a terrible like 5th grade game when I was a bit older, I never actually saw either of them play. So probably the one I followed was my big sister, because she was already playing. And I guess, you know, you want to do everything your elder siblings do. So that's how I got into it, and I just fell in love with the game.
Well, I can tell you, I coached your mother for a couple of seasons, and she was a good goalkeeper, state goalkeeper, so stopped a lot of the ball. Turned up, I always remember, it sticks in my memory. You can tell her this if she's not watching. One night she was going out after the game, said, "I don't want to get my hair wet. I'm not going to dive horrendously for anything, but I'll do my best just to stop anything around me." And of course she didn't, and well, we won, but that was good. But that was the only time that has ever happened to me with your mum. And your father, I can only say, the boys, you would have played with him, fellas, but I played against him. Well, he was a fairly hard fellow to play against. He used to, you know.
I think I can
say he was aggressive. He was aggressive, let's say that.
Yeah, passionate and aggressive, but I think I can safely say I got my sporting abilities from my mother. So.
And your ability not to get your hair wet.
I'm very, very, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I say I've got a good shaped head, but my head doesn't go under either. I finish every game with a dry head.
That's where you got it from. Okay. Now, some of the role models and heroes when you were young that got you going.
Well, I think Dad, you know, all I remember is him coaching the New South Wales State Open team. And I know you talk about those week championships and how, you know, exciting they were. And Dad coached that state team for a very long time. So Taryn Woods, Bronwyn Smith, Liz Weeks, definitely. Yes, my mother was a goalie, but I was in love with Liz. So probably the main reason I became a goalie, but I definitely looked up to those girls, and I just thought they were just the best thing ever. But then I think other sports, I love my netball, and Sherelle McMahon, anyone that knows anything about netball, was my go-to. I think she's fantastic.
Danielle, you played for Australia as a junior and won a world championship. Can you tell us about that and the feeling that you had winning that world championship, and then what happened after that?
Yeah, I think juniors was just the best water polo, the best fun. I think we had a really, really strong junior team. I think by the time we got to world championships, I think probably our starting 7 or even 8 were in the open national squad. So we were really lucky. We had a lot of experience that probably other junior teams haven't had. And we had a really good program. We got 3 years together because the juniors before us was a January tournament. So we were really lucky, which was unusual. So we sort of got 3 European tours together. We knew each other so well. And yeah, to go to world championships, none of us had sort of ever done that before. And it was great. I think we ended up playing China in the grand final. And that was probably the first time so we won in 2007. So right before Beijing. And it was the first time the world had really seen China. And I think they got there because a lot of teams underestimated them. Obviously now we know China is a powerhouse in water polo, but that original team that they had in Beijing, but we were really lucky. They were in our World League conferences. So all us girls that had played seniors, we knew how good they were going to be. So I think that really helped us. But yeah, well, in Portugal with all your best mates, it was surreal. It was awesome.
And your career looked like it was on an upward trajectory, but then you succumbed to an injury. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I obviously finished juniors, was already in Dumpers senior squad. And then when I was 22, woke up with a sore hip one day during National League finals. I was like, oh yeah, I'll be right. Sort of told the Australian physio, the medical staff. We sort of rehabbed it for a while. They convinced me to finally get a scan before a World Cup. We'll get some cortisone in it. You'll be right. And then that scan came back and Grace Bryan, the Australian doctor, rang me, and it was basically, well, I didn't know at the time, but career over. I had worn a hole away in my pelvis, which is apparently really difficult to do. There's been a few journal articles written about my hips. So that was in 2010. And at the time, I thought the goal was to be back for the 2012 Olympic camp. And I was sort of given a year recovery on that. But then partway through my recovery, my other hip started to hurt. I was on crutches for 6 months. So the weight bearing on the other side started to hurt, had that one scanned, and straight back in for that surgery. And so after that, London was off the cards, and I sort of put my hands up and said, that's it. I don't want to do it again. And then came back, eventually played National League again. I think I only missed one season, but had about 18 months out of the water. Then after London happened, thought, yep, great. I'm going to, try for Rio. Let's see how this goes. Walked in to see Grace Bryan, the Australian doctor, with my medical forms to get clearance. And she just folded them up, put them down, and just said, nah, I can't let you do it. You need to think about life, having kids, you don't want hip replacements by the time you're 30. And that was basically it. That conversation was my international career.
It's an amazing story. So the injury itself, is that a genetic condition, or is that from training, overuse, or impact? Can you?
Yeah.
Are you blaming your dad for that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely blame mum and dad. Well, I'll blame Phil. He hasn't trained hard enough to probably know if he's got the bad hip. So let's blame Phil. No, the surgeon sort of just said, probably being super active when I was young, I'm quite tall. So he reckons my femur's probably slipped out of the joints at some point growing, made my femur sort of extra strong, which that's really good. But then I picked the sport of water polo, which obviously in that range of motion of egg beater, isn't the best combination. So yeah, my surgeon reckons it had been happening for 10 years and no one believes me, but I wasn't in pain until I was. So I guess it was happening over a long time, never picked up in physio screenings or anything like that. But basically I have the hips of a very, very old active person.
And Danielle, yes, you're quite a goal-driven person. How hard was it to cope with the realisation that representative career was probably over and you had to sort of refocus on what your goals were and what sort of purpose was?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously at the time of the first surgery, I had that goal of being back for the London camp, and I think so did the medical staff, so did the coaching staff. So the first surgery, is as hard as it was, I think I had that goal. Mum used to drive me to the football stadium every day. I'd crutch over to the side of the pool, tie my legs together and stick a pool boy in and, swim Ks and Ks. So it wasn't really till I had that second surgery, I guess, when it got really challenging, because I was like, okay, London, which was the big goal, is off the cards. So yeah, it was definitely hard, but I think I've been super lucky that I've always had more than water polo. I was at uni. I've always worked a lot of part-time jobs. I have always had my netball. So I've had other things, which I think advice to anyone out there, you need to be more than just the athlete, because if something like this does happen, it is really hard. But I had really good support network to lean on. The support network, the doctors, the physio, the psych in the Australian team were fantastic, and probably my saving grace. But definitely having those connections, having uni to focus on. I took up cake decorating. I went on some great holidays. Everyone put in a big effort to really help me.
how important is it to have, you mentioned there the support staff around from a water polo's perspective, but how important is it for two things? One, how important is it for young players to have role models? And then, like you said, you had the players that Phil coached that you kind of looked up to. How important is that? But then also, how important is it having a network of family and friends? So having that balanced outside sport as well to support you.
Yeah, so your first question, I think having that internal support network and people to look up to, I think is super important, whether you get injured, whether you don't. Well-being around athletes, and it's something I'm really passionate about, because I think if I had my time over or I was in a different position, and with what happened with me, I think there could have been a lot more support. As I said, the doctor, the physio, the site were fantastic. Couldn't have asked for more. But I think once I had my second surgery, and I was no longer, I guess, useful in a way to the Australian water polo program, I think it was handled probably quite badly. And I think the sport have come a long way in sport in general, but I think it's just so important. You know, you've done one thing for so long, and then it's like, okay, we don't need you now. See you later, on your merry way. So I think that's an area that is definitely something that needs to be improved. But I think role models for me, I think, are so important. Obviously, I had Taryn and Bronwyn at Balmain. But I think just young kids in general. I know Maddie Proud, one of the netballers, came out the other day, and there's a lot around social media for young kids, and it's bad. They shouldn't be on it. You know, it paints this terrible picture of what life should look like. And she came out and sort of disagreed with that and said, no, they should be on it. They should be following athletes. You know, seeing these athletes go from like young to see what they do. I think it's fantastic. They show hard work. They show goals. So role models, I think, are essential, whether it's in sport, outside sport, really, really important.
You mentioned before there about sports psychs. What was your involvement with a sports psych, and how important is having a sports psych involved in a team, in an athlete? I know when I was playing, it wasn't a very big part of what we did and how we sort of approached it. In the modern era of sport, sports psych seem to be more and more important. What role do they play, and how important is it?
Yeah, I think they play two really important parts. Obviously, you have your sports specific part of it. You know, you make a mistake, how do you deal with that in real time? The performance part of it, and making sure athletes are mentally, strong enough, they can bounce back, they're resilient. Because in a game, when something goes wrong, no one's, you've got to be in your own head. And I think they play a super important role with that. And our sports psych, we focused a lot on that before in the London cycle. I think it's really important. But then I think there's the other part of that, of looking at an athlete and the well-being side of it, whether they, everyone has a different story. Everyone has other things going on. And especially in a sport like ours, where it's a unprofessional to semi-professional sport, there's not many people getting paid to play it. So there's lots of people working. There's lots of people at uni. And I think looking outside the athlete and making sure people are okay, handling things, have that support network around them. Our sports site was really good at that, connecting with people, not just on a performance level. But I think, that well-being side is super important. If you have a happy athlete, they're going to play the best. And I think the whole life has to be happy and balanced to get the best then in the pool.
Yeah, I think that's pretty sage advice. I think Foxy touched on it before, and even just when you were talking then, about the wear and tear on an athlete's body, and more water polo coaches and administrators are pushing for the sport to be a 12-month commitment. And understandably, traditionally our international season is in a winter months, but so it's unavoidable. Like, what's your view on it? Should we be a 12-month sport? Should we be a summer, winter? Obviously, you've got balance between other sports you play, but for young kids coming through, what should we be? What's your opinion on it?
I am my father's daughter. I have a really strong opinion on this, actually. 100% agree. We're in a sport where our winter, it's a European sport. So internationally, you're in an open team, you're in a junior Australian team, you're going to be going from domestic competition to international, and it does become more of a 12-month-a-year sport. Anything below that, you know, your state levels, your club levels, 100% it should not be a 12-month-a-year sport. I think that's where burnout happens. And I think, I remember growing up, yes, there was always winter comp. So I'm talking New South Wales here. We always had a winter comp, but there was absolutely, you never trained. You turned up on a Sunday night. If you were free, you had a lot of people in your team, you went and you had fun. I don't think it's like that. I think, you know, there's pressure on kids to play winter, because if they don't play winter and keep playing 12 months a year, then it's going to impact them in summer. And yeah, then you get 16-year-olds who haven't had more than a week off or 2 weeks off water polo, you know, since they were 12 years old. And you wonder why kids stop playing the sport at 19. Yeah, so 100%, I think you need an off season. I have even if I didn't have my netball, I would 100% have an off season from water polo, playing and coaching as well, because you want to come back into a season excited, ready to go, not being like, oh goodness, I've just had 2 weeks off, here we go again. Yeah, play, especially young kids, play other sports, you know, do other things, do your music, do whatever. But yeah, definitely no.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic point for the juniors to note. I've heard you say netball quite a few times. It's obviously another of your sporting passions, and you've managed to balance that very well with your water polo and other life pursuits. And you talk about the excitement. One thing that COVID has brought is excitement, because everyone wants to get back and play. And you mentioned it with your AWL team. They were so excited to be wanting to play, but then disappointed that they couldn't. So hopefully from now on, with things opening up, we will be more excited and be able to have that opportunity. Danielle, we've got a lot of females coaching junior teams, but this year you were the only one who was going to coach an AWL team. Do you feel like you're flying the flag for the female coaches, or should we be doing more to get female coaches involved at the top echelons, not just the junior levels?
100% we should be getting more. I just think coaches in general, there needs to be more coaches in water polo. Yes, female coaches, great. But just in general, you know, you see the same, you turn up to a pool, you normally see the same people there coaching a lot of teams, which is really good. But I think it comes a time when, you know, you need other people, you need to be mentoring other people coming through. Do I feel like I'm flying the flag for the females in terms of National League? Not really, in terms of, no one's ever told me I shouldn't coach National League because I'm a girl. You know, Katie Finnecan was there for Fremantle last year. Mel Rippon's coached, Beck Rippon's coached. But yeah, I'd love some more girls on the side, definitely, coaching teams. But, you know, my whole coaching staff is females, and people find that odd and they comment on it. And I'm like, nah, we had Nathan Thomas for a year, but he's too opinionated. We got rid of him and kicked him to the boys' side. So yeah, I just think more coaches in general you need.
And you mentioned mentoring. Are you doing a mentoring role, or are your coaches actually mentoring other female coaches and coaches in general in Balmain and across New South Wales?
Yeah, myself this year definitely didn't take on much of a mentoring role with junior coaches. I just had my second baby, so life was a bit full for me. But yeah, our coaches, so Taryn Woods coaches with me. She's, you know, back down coaching the 12s. Chloe Wilcox stepped in as my other assistant coach this year, who coaches our junior teams. Quite a lot of the girls in my program are coaching junior Balmain teams, which I think is super important. Not just giving back to the sport, but I think seeing it from a coaching side and trying to coach young kids, especially in a sport of water polo where they can go underwater and cause trouble, I think it makes better players, to be honest. So yeah, we've definitely something we encourage at Balmain is for the girls to give back, and from the men's side as well. We have a huge handful of people coaching our junior teams.
Go girls. Now, can you ever see a time when a woman coaches a men's National League team?
I'll coach our men's team now. They just got to ask me. Might be able to sort them out. Can I see it? Why not? I don't think there's a reason they can't. We see men coaching female teams. So why couldn't a female coach a men's team? I think, yeah, they play different styles of water polo, but just like a male coach can bring, you know, a men's perspective. And I think that was something Nathan was really good at. You know, he was so perplexed by this holding, you know, what they've got so much to grab. I just don't get it. Just be more skillful. You know, he brought that to our female side. So why couldn't a female coach bring things to a men's side that would help them? So can I see it happening? Yeah, meh. Ugh, I don't know. But 100% I don't see why it shouldn't or couldn't. And maybe not a head coach to start with, but an assistant coach. Different perspective.
Foxy, can you see it happening?
I could see it, yeah, possibly. And we know that the name escapes you at the moment, Danielle, you can help me, but one of the former netball coaches, Australian netball coaches, wants to coach at AFL level.
Yes, Lisa Alexander.
Correct, that's it, yeah. So she's actually actively put her name out there, and she did apply for the North Melbourne job last year, which David Noble got, but she's made it quite public that she would be very keen to pursue AFL coaching as in the top level. So that's one of our main professional sports. And so if we could do that for the main professional sport, I can't see why we couldn't do it for a sport like water polo. Yeah, and the points that Danielle made are completely valid.
What's it going to take as far as attitude goes?
Yes, it would be acceptance, and acceptance from the players, and older male players might find that a little bit more difficult. But I think there is a general trend and understanding now that amongst our junior players that they are more accepting to change and things that these possibilities that may occur.
I think there'd be no issue if I turned up to one of our Balmain men's sessions and coached them, or, you know, with Nathan's history, he got red carded and I took him over for a game. I can't see a respect issue at all. I think and maybe that just, you know, is a really good reflection on the program we have at Balmain, but they'd listen to me, they'd take on board. I wouldn't see an issue with it.
I think it's the same with any coaches. If you know your stuff and you're well organised, most players will respond well to that. And I think you mentioned Nathan before, and he's commented the way that you run training sessions and even the way you play, you coach games, is that you're very organised in the way that you do things. Having played under your dad for a little while, you definitely did not get that from him. His team talks, I think most of us walk out more confused than we actually walk into it. At least we know that we need to press in front. But where did you get that organisation from, and why is it important?
I really think it comes back to probably growing up as an elite athlete. You don't have time to not know what you're doing, in terms of you have a very short period of time to do your homework or study or, you know, get to uni, get to training. You've got to be organized. You've got to know what's happening. I think that's how I've grown up. And my girls would probably say, a bit anal in my scheduling in terms of what we do at training, but also if they've got a wedding in 3 months' time, I want to know now. I want to, you know, look forward, see when I'm going to get my juniors in the pool. But I think it's just really important to look at a season as a whole. And I know my girls get frustrated, but we really don't do tactics till probably December, because I think it's really important, you know, to do your counter attack, do your week of shooting, do your week of centre forward, instead of getting into a season and just focusing on tactics from the first thing. It's a long season. You know, if I had known COVID was going to happen for the last 2 years, I would have planned my probably 3 or 4 year cycle very differently. But you know, I'm just an organized person, so I like knowing what's happening, who's coming. Yeah.
Okay, you've spoken all about netball and your participation in it and your love for it. What can we take out of netball as a sport the sport of water polo to make our sport better?
I think the biggest thing is the pathways in netball, how to get to the top. It's really, really clear. I think from a grassroots level, you know, you play your club netball, you make your rep team, you go to a state championships, you know, like there's a huge long pathway, and it's really clear, and there's lots and lots of little steps. And it's obviously a huge participation sport, but it's not a huge elite level sport, which I think water polo is starting to blur the lines with. Personally, I think we have a lot of kids making state teams. And it used to be, I'm sure, a long time ago, but definitely in my time, it was really hard. You had 13 under 16 kids in a state team. You had 13 under 20 kids in a state team, and that was it. And it was the same for Australian teams. You have one under 20 Australian team and one youth Australian team, and that was it. And now I get so confused in water polo, born 07, born 06, born... And I know netball's not like that. They have so many thousands and thousands of kids playing. There's one under 17 state team, one under 19 state team. That's it. And so I think the pathways are clear. The participation is fantastic, and the grassroots accommodates for everyone. But then the elite is something really hard to make with a clear pathway. And I think that is the biggest thing we could take from a sport like netball.
Are we going to lose good female athletes to these more professional sports? Like where you've got netball, you've got AFLW, Big Bash League. So you've got women's sport now where there's a fair bit of money involved. I think traditionally water polo has always had a lot of the best athletes, female athletes in the country. Are we going to lose those to other sports?
I think the one thing water polo has going on its side is that it's a really unique skill set. Whereas I know, you know, netball and AFLW, a lot of skills cross over. And I know that was sort of a worry from a netball side of things. Is everyone going to go to AFLW because of, you know, the money in that? Is it more than netball, you know, the television, the broadcasting, etc.? I think you'll keep people in water polo because it's a hard skill set, not, you know, land to water. But I definitely think the pathways need to be clearer, and it also needs to be, if you're not in a certain pathway in water polo, there still has to be a way to make it when you're older, which I think we don't necessarily have. I think by the time you're 18, 19, out of under 20s, if you aren't in a program, NSWIS, state teams, Australian junior teams, how many people actually still make it?
Danielle, you've outlined a very clear pathway for netball players. What about for referees in netball? Yeah,
I have only umpired when, so it's an umpire. Don't get all the netball haters on your bad side there. I only umpired when I was younger, but it's super easy to umpire at a grassroots level in netball. Majority of netballers do it for their pocket money all day on a Saturday while they play. But the netball umpires are so professional. They have training sessions, weekly training sessions. You know, we're out at Netball Central training, and those umpires are training just as hard as we are. They have umpiring camps. They have a really, and don't quote me, I'm not going to pretend to know everything about umpiring, but there's a real step-by-step level, you know, to get your senior, I think it's AA badge is your top badge. And it's really celebrated. Like, we know every game if someone's getting badged on our game, if they get it after. It's a really celebrated thing to be a netball umpire, which I think is fantastic. And they're also constantly being coached. There is someone watching them and coaching them every game. I'm more talking sort of Premier League and above, and they do homework. They watch it back, you know, they get clips. So it's as big as being a netballer, as being an athlete. They do as much work as we do.
So they have a specific netball coach, and then who evaluates the referees when they get, umpires? Who evaluates the umpires when they're getting badged?
Yeah, so they have a big panel, and there is numerous people on that panel, and they are walking around Premier League every Wednesday night watching the umpires, whether there's umpires getting badged or not. They're there and after the games, talking to every umpire and helping them. And these are your top umpires as well. Like, it's not just sort of your younger umpires probably coming through, inexperienced ones. They're talking to top umpires, and Sharon Kelly, who was Australia's #1 umpire for a long time, she heads that. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of them that then give back. But there are so many umpires. As I said, it's huge, huge.
Yeah. I think Phil's aiming for that sort of structure, but we have to go back to state level first up before we get into what we're doing at the moment. Okay, now which rule out of the new rules, I'll say, Danielle, could be better explained to players, coaches, and I suppose the people in the stands as well?
Sometimes I say, what are the new rules after watching a game before coaching a game on waterpolo?
Said by a goalkeeper.
The whole lot.
But I think the biggest one is centre forward, centre back. And I think that is what frustrates me the most as a coach, is the inconsistency with how that's reffed. One game, I find it's one thing. My centre backs can get away doing something. The next game, it's completely different. And I think I ask a lot of questions. I pester my father about it. But I think that is, my biggest frustration for me. What's a penalty? What's, what do we play on for? What's a kick out? I don't have the answer. I don't know. I can't explain the rule to you because I get I don't know. So maybe you lot can.
Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Okay, now this is very important. We're running out of time, but we must do this one. What is Dive In for DK? It's in a really important project for the Balmain Club in particular, but everyone should get involved.
Yep, that's why I'm here tonight. So DK, that's a nickname for one of our goalies, Dakota Stewart, who has definitely had a breakout year this year. She's 19. She's a Sydney Northern Beaches junior. So got to give them a big shout out for making her such a great player. But came over to Balmain about 4 or 5 years ago, she thinks. I asked her today. And she's my second goalie for National League. Obviously, my first goalie was caught up into the Olympic squad. So she played the whole second half of our season as our first grade goalie. Made her first under-20 Australian squad. But then probably 2 weeks after National League, got diagnosed with leukemia. So obviously a huge shock. I think it was the same week, maybe even the same day, she made that Australian under-20 squad. So now, she's got a huge different battle on her hands. And I think everyone just wants to support her. So we have organised a big fundraiser, but tried to make it in DK. She's such a fun, bright girl. Something fun so lots of people can come down, get involved. So we've organised a Fast Fives water polo tournament down at Balmain. So it is Sunday week, the 23rd of May. We're going to obviously have the water polo tournament, and it is just... it's there for fun. They can wear, the water's probably going to be cold. You can wear wetsuits. You can, do what you want. There's 36 teams entered. We had to shut off entries because we're still trying to work out how to fit everyone in on the day. But there's not just the tournament. We've got a DJ down there. We've got a huge online raffle running at the moment. We're going to have a chocolate wheel. I've got to give a shout out to Phil's chocolate wheel for all the old school chocolate wheel people there. That's the one where you spin the numbers around. I learned about it the other day. So lots of fun, lots of raffles on the day, barbecue, bar. We're in the process of organising a celebrity relay to finish off the day. But yeah, just everyone get down to Balmain, get behind DK. It's really given her something to look forward to. And her goal is to hopefully, fingers crossed, be out of hospital and be able to get down there on the day. But yeah, just raising funds for her long journey ahead and helping her not just to, fight this battle, but get her back in the pool.
So Danielle, if anybody would like to, they can't get down there on the day and they'd like to donate some cash, how do they do that?
Yep. So the best place for information where everything is on our Instagram page, and it is Dive In for DK. Did I get that right, James?
It did. It's at Dive In for DK.
At Dive In for DK. And there is a link there in our profile, and that has the link to the online raffle tickets. It also has a donation link if you just want to donate. It has Delphina have jumped on board to do all merchandise, with 100% of it going towards Dakota, which is just phenomenal. They have been fantastic. So there's the link there to buy your Dive In for DK merchandise. It's hats, beanies, t-shirts, long sleeves. So everything is there. Go to our Instagram page. It also has all the information there. Send me a message. Don't ask to enter a team because I cannot take any more. There's already a huge reserve list. Yeah, but come down on the day or support it. There's so many raffle prizes. The community, and I think coming from something like this, it's really humbling, and it really reflects on our water polo community, how everyone, you know, puts in, and as much as, you know, everyone's rivals. The day we launched this, there's people from West ringing, there's Des Moines people ringing. It was overwhelming, the support behind Dakota. So yeah, if you want to donate a raffle prize, get in touch. You want to, yeah, any questions or anything, do not hesitate to get in touch.
What's that address again, James?
It is at Dive In for DK, and that's on Instagram.
Okay, very important everyone gets involved. And,
there's also a couple of amazing online options as well that'll be happening from now until the day. So if you can't get down, get on to that site and look up for some live options, online options.
Great. All right. That is something really to look forward to, and what a fantastic cause, and well done to the Balmain Club and everybody else getting involved. Danielle, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been great.
Thank you very much for having me.
And boys, Foxy, James, really good. We're going to see, well, we've got a huge array of people on our panel, so we'll see you at some stage. There's no doubt about that. And in the meantime, we await for around about another fortnight's time for the next episode, and it might include one of our proposed guests today, AJ Roach. He might be available. We'll see. But he'll have something to say for sure. So that could be on the next episode of The Whistleblower. We'll see you then. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Minnie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Danielle.